Hi, I wanted to come live and talk about a couple of things. The first thing I want to talk about is this idea of teaching niche and what that means. So Tatiana has asked a question about if I were to focus on teaching English communication skills to IT professionals, talking about that as the possible niche. So really briefly, this idea of niche, if you're not familiar with it, it's choosing kind of a specialty or a specific area to focus on to make yourself more attractive to potential students. So for example, if you say, I teach kids and I teach business English and I teach IELTS and I teach TOEFL and I teach travel English, that's not super appealing to potential students. We as in humans, we tend to want things that are really focused, like something just for us. So it can be tempting to say, I do this and this and this because you want to feel like you can be a good teacher to everyone. But usually the more effective thing to do is really just hone in on one specific audience and say, I want to be a very good teacher for this specific group of people. So just in general, when we talk about English communication skills to IT professionals, that is a pretty specific niche as opposed to something a little broader, for example, business English. Now, business English is really broad. It really depends on how you want to plan on attracting students. So for example, on a teaching platform like italki, I had a lot of success with business English because there were a lot of different people who were looking for teachers. Now, if you plan on being more proactive and, for example, going onto LinkedIn and using their Sales Navigator tool to find people who are in a very specific industry like IT, then you might be better off saying I teach English to IT professionals. So I've never labeled myself that. But if there is one specific industry that most of my students come from, it's the IT industry. So even though my niche has always been business English, I've always been a business English teacher for IT professionals. And I'll tell you why I love that as a niche. And it's because people in the IT industry, almost wherever they are in the world, can afford to pay higher prices. So even if you were to set your prices, I'm just gonna say $20 US an hour. At $20 US an hour, you are going to disqualify a large set of the population of Earth. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That doesn't mean that you should charge $5 because you need to be able to be the teacher to everyone. No, that's not what I'm saying. So really, almost no matter what you charge, you're gonna be disqualifying someone. But if you cater specifically to the IT crowd, then these are people who, generally speaking, in just a much larger percentage of the population, they're going to be able to afford your lessons. So you could charge 30, you could charge 40, you could charge 50, you can charge higher than that. But anyway, that's the secondary issue. The other thing I want to address is your specific question, like, if I don't have any experience in business English, how do I begin if I want to be a business English teacher to IT professionals? So if there's one thing I've observed with IT professionals, and I've taught dozens, over 100 probably, of one-on-one for several weeks at a time of IT professionals, what I have found is that the vast majority of IT professionals, the thing that they struggle with the least is actually their business English. Most IT professionals already come to my lessons with a very high level of fluency, a high level of vocabulary, a high level of grammar. Now, they say, I need English at work, and this is true. Why? Because they need to communicate with other colleagues. They often, in the IT industry, you have a lot of what is referred to as ELF, English as lingua franca, which means most of the people who are speaking English are non-native speakers. What you have is non-native speakers from one country speaking to non-native English speakers from another country. They're using English because that's their common language. So it's usually actually a lot easier for non-native speakers to communicate in English when there's not a native speaker. So that's a little bit tangential. But when I work with them, I don't go over IT vocabulary with them. I don't have to go over, this is how we do a business meeting. That's not usually what they need. Usually, hi Marcos from Nicaragua, it's nice to see you. Usually people who are in the IT industry, what they need is exactly what Off to Class offers. What they need is to take a placement test and then to work on all those areas that they're weak. And the way I present this to them, and I talk to them about this, is to say, look, yes, you need to be able to speak English. You need to be able to speak better in a variety of circumstances. It's when you're on these Zoom meetings, when you're doing these like weekly team meetings. It's when you're on like conference calls with people in different countries. It's when you're talking to your boss who might be in another country and you're both speaking English. It's not usually just a very specific set of circumstances. It's a very broad set of circumstances. And it even encounters things like small talk. So when I talk to someone who is in the IT industry, and most of my students are, what we do is I tell them, listen, the best thing I can do for you is I can help you stop making these lower level mistakes. If you're coming to me, you're a B2, you're a C1, a lot of these people are, then because they're educated and they've probably been taking English classes for a long time, just from school and whatnot. I tell them, listen, we're gonna give you a placement test. And once we give you this placement test, it's gonna show me where you're weak. And before we do anything else, we're gonna work on where you're weak. We're gonna make it so that if you're a B2, if you're a C1, you're not making A2 mistakes. Because those are the mistakes that are gonna make you look silly, that are gonna make you feel silly. So we're gonna fix those. And then we fix those. I don't even necessarily usually use the Off the Class business English lessons. I'll use the step-by-step curriculum, or I'll use the lessons that are connected to their gap analysis. And then, once we clean up some of those gaps, then we say, okay, you know what you really need to learn to communicate? You need phrasal verbs. Because everybody needs phrasal verbs. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to do 45 minutes of our lesson working on whatever the main thing is, and then we're gonna do 15 minutes and we're gonna do part of this phrasal verb lesson. And we're gonna learn phrasal verbs in a really structured way. And the Off to Class phrasal verbs are excellent for that. They work really well to do like at the few minutes at the end of a lesson like that. And they work perfectly for that. And then I'll say, okay, so now we're gonna do another 45-minute lesson, and now we're gonna do a piece of these idioms for the workplace lesson, also in the lesson library. And we're gonna tuck that in at the end. And so I do this kind of mix where I'll focus primarily on either the step-by-step curriculum or on the lessons that are from their gap analysis, from the placement test mistakes that they made. And then we supplement that with phrasal verbs, we supplement it with idioms, and then we'll supplement it with advanced topics. So you're B2, you're C1, guaranteed you're gonna struggle with conditionals. So we're gonna go over conditionals. What's a first conditional? What's a second conditional? What's a third conditional? And then what's a mixed conditional? So we'll take these advanced topics, and that's a good thing to mix in because that will also make them feel like I'm doing hard stuff. Another thing that a lot of people will struggle with is articles, so we'll mix articles in. Maybe they need writing, so we'll look at some of their emails. It all depends on what the student needs, but these are my go-tos. And again, my students are IT people. We don't do anything specific IT. I say, are you an expert in your industry? They say yes. I say, do you know all the English vocabulary you need to learn around the technical things? Yes, they're used to that. So I love English for IT. I have no IT background whatsoever. Information to that's not what my background, that's not what my education is, yet that's nearly exclusively who I teach. So I feel extremely comfortable with them. I walk into a lesson with an IT person with all the confidence in the world. So I do recommend that. I think you can have a lot of success with it. I don't think you need to worry about not having business English. I think you just need to frame it with them as, we're gonna fix your lower level mistakes so you don't make those anymore. And then we're just gonna help you speak in a variety of different circumstances. So whether you're having small talk before the Zoom meeting starts, so when you're giving your status report, whether you're giving your sales presentation, whatever the case may be. So I hope that was helpful. Last thing, abrupt switch, change of topics. I just wanna also say, we are going to be adding more profiles to the Off to Class teacher community. I'll put a link that's going to be right below on how to submit your application to the teacher community. If you have already submitted an application to the teacher community, I've got it and you'll be going up in the next week. We're gonna be adding several more over the next 2 weeks. So I'm excited for that to continue to grow. Click on the link to fill out the application. It won't take long, super easy. You will be able to use that as a profile, as something you can show students that has a video about you, that has text that you've written, and that students can book a trial lesson to meet with you directly from there. When students find their way to offtoclass.com and they get confused and they think that this is an online language school, that we send them to the teacher community to go find and choose a teacher. So that link is below. I do like to go live to answer questions. Tatiana tagged me and asked me specifically to answer this question about niche and about IT professionals. If there is an online ESL topic that you would specifically like me to address, feel free to ask it in a question. Tag me. It may take several days, but when I can, I will. I do like to go live and answer questions. So I hope you're having a good day, good night, wherever you are, and I'll see everybody another time. All right, bye everyone.